Hello, everybody. Guess it was not too long ago we had introduced a series of lightning round questions. This is lightning round question number 9. And because it's number 9, it's my turn to try to answer the question. And so Kurt has that question for us now.
I do. And these come in to us from listeners of the podcast, and we're grateful for that. Want to encourage you, if you do have a Bible question that's on your mind, mail it into to us, share it at the Common Sense Gospel. We'll be happy to study it and provide a Bible answer. But here's the question that came in from a listener that Danny's going to address today. The question is, if God says something is a sin, how do I then treat a loved one who is engaging in that sin?
Okay, that's a good question. It's a very tough question when it becomes personal. The question is obviously about a loved one. How do I treat a loved one who is engaging in a particular sin that God or the Bible clearly says is a sin? There's going to be some extra challenges with this since they are a loved one who is in sin, or most likely a family member. I'm going to assume loved one means family member. But no matter how you decide to handle this, you will be seeing them at Thanksgiving, Christmas, other holidays, birthdays, funerals, family funerals, and other family events. And so this is something that will continue to be a part of your relationship. And so that makes it difficult as well. I would answer this, because I don't know all the details around it, I would answer this in light of two different scenarios. The first one is this is a loved one who is engaged in a particular sin that God clearly condemns, and they are a believing Christian or a member of the Lord's church. If they're a loved one of mine and they are a member of the Lord's church, then that helps me know a little more about the situation. This is one particular sin I know they're involved in, and I know that God condemns that sin. In this case, I would strongly advise anyone who's caught up in this or finds himself in this situation to follow God's prescription in Matthew 18, really specifically verses 15 through 17. Jesus tells us how to deal with someone. In this case, he says, who has sinned against you. But he says in Matthew 18, if your brother sins against you, go and confront him privately. If he listens to you, you have won your brother over. But if he will not listen, take one or two others along, so that every matter may be established by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. If he refuses to listen to them, tell it to the church. If he refuses to listen to the church, regard him as you would a pagan or a tax collector. And so we say, well, maybe the sin's not against me. I wouldn't let that get in the way of this, because if we're sinning against God, then we're in serious trouble. It must be addressed. So I think the Matthew 18 principle works very well there. And in 1 Corinthians 5, we're dealing with the man who has taken his father's wife. Paul tells the church how to deal with that. He says, I'm writing to you that you may not associate with anyone who claims to be a brother, but is sexually immoral or greedy, an idolater or a verbal abuser, a drunkard or a swindler. With such a man, do not even eat. What business of mine is it to judge those outside the church? Are you not the judge of those inside? God will judge those who are outside. And so he says, expel that wicked man from among you. So someone is involved in sin. They're a member of the church. We have an obligation to God first to make it very clear to them that if they remain in that sin, they are not in fellowship with the saints. They are not in fellowship with God, and they're in serious trouble. Galatians 6:1. Brothers, if someone is caught in a trespass, you who are spiritual should restore him with a spirit of gentleness. But watch yourself, lest you also be tempted. 2 Thessalonians 3:14. If anyone does not obey our word in this epistle, note that person, do not keep company with him, that he may be ashamed. So again, this is a loved one, but if they're a believer, they've read these passages, I'm assuming, and so we say to them, I'm sorry, I can't go have a meal with you. But I think the one connecting piece to this is I will always go have a meal with someone who's caught up in a sin to talk about that sin. Mm-hmm. And Paul's saying, don't commune with them, don't partake of life with them as though there's nothing wrong, because that is an offense to God. You can't pretend everything's okay when their soul is at high risk of being lost. And so I can sit down with them, but it won't be to talk about the baseball game yesterday. It's going to be to talk about how we can help them get out of the sin they are in. So the other one I have is a loved one who's not a member of the church. They're involved in a sin God clearly condemns. And I'm assuming if that's the case, we're just deeply troubled by this particular sin. So my encouragement to you is to do all that you can to warn them of that sin. and where sin leads. Ephesians 4:15 tells us to speak the truth in love. They are, if they're not believers, they have not obeyed the gospel, they are in a lost condition before God. There is only one way to be saved, and that is by the gospel of Jesus Christ. Romans 1 and verse 16. My encouragement to you in this situation is be a shining light of truth to them. Look for opportunities to share God's truth and make sure they know that you are always available to talk about God's promise of eternal salvation. We're all accountable to God. Those who appear before him in judgment without the advocate that he's provided will be judged in their sins without any hope of forgiveness. In Acts chapter 8 and verse 4, just think about a Bible situation where people went out to the lost, just in general, people who were not saved. Acts 8 and verse 4, those who were scattered by the persecution in Jerusalem, tells us they went out everywhere preaching the word. So my encouragement is sin is sin. Tell them that salvation awaits those who will turn and live.